tonight to tell you about the worst vacation I've ever had in my life. So my mother had a timeshare down in Cancun that she went to several times a year. She had a whole community down there. And one year, about a week before she was going to go down there, she ended up having some health issues, and she had a stent put in to her artery by her heart. So I tried to talk to her and say, put it off. I'll buy you a new plane ticket. I'll buy you another 2 weeks at the timeshare. Just put it off. And she's, no, very stubborn, gonna go. So the day she goes down there, it's a Saturday, I get a call from my brother about 4 o'clock. And he says, listen, the consulate from Cancun has called me. Something has happened to Mom. They need somebody to go down there and sort it out. So he gives us the phone number for the hospital to give them a call, find out what's going on. My wife is proficient in Spanish, so we call the hospital, and about all we can get out of them is something has happened with her brain. She is unconscious, it's serious, and something needs to happen, and a surgeon will be calling us shortly. So about 2 hours later, we get a call from a neurosurgeon who basically tells us my mother had a massive intracranial hematoma, which is basically a stroke, had a lot of blood in her brain that needed to be drained, and she needed surgery in order to live. And so this seemed like a real no-brainer to be able to move forward and have the blood removed and move on. So I call my brother, say, come up, we buy one-way tickets to go down the next day so that we can go out and figure out what the next steps are gonna look like. So I'm sitting at Dulles the next morning, and I'm thinking to myself, we're gonna go down there, she's gonna be asleep, she's gonna wake up, we're gonna yell at her, she's gonna cry, and we're gonna come home and just figure out what life is gonna look like. So we go down there, and we're actually able to get into her timeshare because she had our names on it. So we dump our stuff at the timeshare, we go to the hospital, and we're sitting there waiting to talk to the doctor, and they bring her stuff out to us. And it is covered in blood. And so we're like, trying to figure out what happened. So we go in the back, and we're talking to the doctor, and the doctor says, your mother had an uncontrollable nosebleed when she landed, and they couldn't stop it. They took her here by ambulance. While we were evaluating her, her speech started slurring, her eyes rolled back in her head, and she lost consciousness. And so basically, she'd had a stroke, her blood was too thin, and she had high blood pressure. And as he was telling the story, he said, your mother has a hole in her nose, like someone who's done a lot of cocaine. And I sat there and thought to myself, my mother talks in 10-minute long sentences, she's quick to anger, and she's very impulsive. And I see my brother and my wife kind of doing the same math in their head. We're like, no. So we get to go see her now. And so to see her, we have to scrub up, and we get to see her one at a time. So my brother goes back first, and when he comes back, there's tears in his eyes. And I go back, and I see her, and there is just a ton of medical equipment underneath, some of which is my mother. And I don't know where one starts and the other one ends. Her head is half shaved, there's a tube coming out, blood coming out of her, this drainage coming out. And it was just too much to take in. So I go out and I sit in the room and I just kind of collapse in a chair and said, she's a fucking idiot, and burst into tears. And as I'm sitting there, my wife goes in and sees her, and we're just completely taken aback about what's gonna happen next, because this is way more serious than we thought it was. So we go back to the timeshare, and we're just sort of processing, and that night, kind of talking, and we're standing on the balcony at this resort, and over out in the water, there's party boats going, and they're shooting off fireworks, and laughter, and drinking, and everyone's partying. And so we're just trying to kind of figure out what's going on. So the next day, we go to the hospital, and we're sitting there talking to the doctors, and they say, okay, we need to actually remove a piece of her skull so that her brain can expand because it's swelling. So we need to move forward with that, but we need you to start putting money on your credit card to pay for it. So now we've got 2 emergency brain surgeries on our credit card, and we go back to the hotel and try to figure out what's going to happen, try to get access to our assets, how long we can sustain this because it's serious. And I'm talking to insurance companies and financial planners, and there's like mariachi bands playing in the background because we're at a resort, and off in the distance, Marco Polo, and trying to kind of figure it out. So surgery goes successfully, but it's going to be unsustainable. We can't keep going at this rate. So we call the consulate and we say, what do we do here? And the consulate says, you're going to do one of two things. You're going to do 2 things. 1, you're going to find yourself an air ambulance. And 2, you're going to give them a lump sum payment with a promise to pay them back, not pay them back, and never come back to Mexico. Okay. So we go the next day to pick up to talk to the doctor, say, when is she ready to travel? She's ready to travel right then. So we get the ball in motion. We start putting out some feelers. We've done some research. An air ambulance costs between $20,000 and $40,000 to go from Cancun to Dulles, depending on how much medical staff you needed. And fortunately enough, we were fortunate enough that we actually had a long-lost relative we'd never met donate the air ambulance to us. So there's still good out there in this world. So we go back to the timeshare. We're kind of getting stuff organized. The catch on the air ambulance is it can only bring 2 of us, and it's 3. So my brother and I decide that we're going to go. My wife's going to stay behind just in case something happens in flight. So we go back to the hospital. The air ambulance is on the ground. There's an ambulance waiting. They're getting her kind of unhooked from all the real equipment and putting on a bunch of battery-operated stuff. And they slide a piece of paper across the table that says, we were signing her out against medical advice. And this was not the case, and we push back, and we are just kind of anxious and angry and don't know what to do with this, and trying to get in touch with a doctor, demanding to talk to a doctor. And as we're doing this, a very large gentleman walks out from the back. He's about 6'5", 250, and basically about the size of Dwayne Johnson. And my wife, who thinks this gentleman is responsible to it, at 5'2½", goes storming towards him, fist clenched, and before she can throw the first punch, he says, "Hi, I'm Nurse Mike. I'm with the air ambulance." Nurse Mike is on our team. Nurse Mike looked like the kind of guy you always wanted on your team. So we go in the back and we talk to them, and it turns out that was the only form they had in English. So with some help from Nurse Mike, we make a few amendments and we go on our way. So I'm sitting in the back of the ambulance with my mother and Nurse Mike, who is now hooked up to everything operated by battery that's keeping her alive. If the Energizer Bunny ever had a moment, I'm hoping for this right now, as she's hooked up to this battery equipment. And as we're on the road to the airport, every single bump along the way, alarms are flying off, going off, it's just loud, and I keep asking Nurse Mike, is it okay? He says, yes, it's okay. So we get to the airport where the air ambulance is, and it's like a 10-seater that's been converted, one row has been taken out, and we're sitting there, it's very cramped quarters space. Also in the ambulance, or the air ambulance, is Nurse John. So now we've got 2 of them. And the only space on the floor is a red Igloo cooler at my feet. And I think to myself, oh my God, what is in the red Igloo cooler? So Nurse Mike and Nurse John are having a conversation that looks like this. Hey, did you have that tube? No, I left it on the ambulance. Is the ambulance still here? No. Do we need it? Yeah. Well, all right, we'll figure something out. Not a lot of confidence. It's about midnight at this point that we're actually sitting here on the air ambulance with Nurse Mike, Nurse John, and the pilot. And so we take off. And as we get into the air, the pilot leans back and says, hey, can you reach into that cooler and get me some water? So I open up the cooler, and inside the cooler is like waters and sodas and all that sort of stuff. So he says, help yourself to anything if you want. And Nurse Mike asks for something. So, drinks are passed around, and then they pass back a tray of sandwiches. So there's meal service on the air ambulance. And not just any meal service. Like the peanuts you get on United, nothing compared to this. There's like Ferrero Rocher chocolates and grapes and all kinds of great sandwiches. So we land at Dulles at about 3:30 in the morning, and we go off and we go to Customs, and Customs walks up to us and says, are you bringing anything back into the country that you did not leave with? And we said, yes, she is on the plane. So we go to the hospital, to Inova Fairfax, or at Dulles, and they start hooking up to things, and the equipment they use in Mexico is not the same equipment they use in the States. So they're starting to try to figure out some level of conversion and things like that. And once they have her somewhat stable, my brother and I go home about 5 a.m. to get some sleep, because we've been up for about 40 hours at this point. So we get a few hours of sleep, we go back to the hospital, and we are met by a doctor with a very stern look on her face. And the doctor says to us, we've hooked her up to an EEG, there's not a lot of brain activity, it does not look good. We see that she has an advanced medical directive. You may want to start thinking about what your plan is going to be as far as continued care or withdrawing care. And it was a punch in the gut. My knees buckled, I started crying, and I felt like I was going to throw up. So, I asked for a few minutes, and she came back, and she came back a little bit later on, and she said, look, there still might be some medication she hasn't metabolized yet, so let's give it a few days. We're going to give her a CAT scan, or an MRI, and we'll figure out, what things look like. But you need to start thinking about whether or not you want to withdraw care per her advanced medical directive, which was her decision. So we do this for a couple days, go into the hospital, nothing, no new news, and they're getting ready to do the MRI, and they ask us, does your mother have any tattoos or piercings? I mean, how many people can definitively say that their mother does not have any tattoos or piercings? We don't think so, but could you check for us while you're there? Because we just don't know. So the MRI comes back. The damage is worse than they thought it was. She's been intubated for about 10 days now, so it's decision time. We either give her a tracheotomy and a feeding tube, a nice thing they call trach and peg, or we withdraw care and let her see how long she can go until she can't go any longer and let her pass on. Very difficult decision. We tried to probe the doctor, complete and total poker face, would not tell us one way or the other. So we go to lunch and we talk it over. This is her decision, but it's not the one that she actually has to enforce. It is on us to enforce this decision. So we go back and we tell the doctor, we would like to go ahead and withdraw care. And he instantly has a relief look on his face. He said, I think you're doing the right thing. So when they withdraw the care, two things happen as soon as they pull out the intubation tube. One, she starts this rasping noise, which is intense. And the second is that for the first time in 10 days, her eyes open. And she's there, but she's not there. It is a reaction to the discomfort, but it is a really strange moment. And while she is sitting there, laying there, the doctor tells us she could could take her a couple weeks, but she probably won't last the night. And as we're sitting there talking to her and playing her favorite music and sort of, kind of saying our goodbyes, a gentleman comes in to come get the equipment. And as he's getting there, as he's doing this thing, his phone rings and he starts having a very loud conversation. And I said, excuse me, can you take that outside? I'm trying to watch my mom die here. So he turned bright red, walked out, never saw him again. Equipment never left the room. And so after a few hours, her breathing slowed, and she got to a point where she took in one last breath and let it out. Somebody said she's gone. And my mother was not someone who's going to let anyone have the last word. So she took in one more last breath and let it out. And as she let it out, the last of the life left her body, and she was gone. Thank you.
Oh, the passing